Hello everyone, today we're going to be scripting a quest. Now this is going to be a free-to-play quest. It's more just to show you how to do it as opposed to a specific one. This account doesn't have membership, so that's why it's just going to be a free-to-play quest. The first tool we're going to be using is the Script Factory UI. Of course, you could use other things like Notepad. You could also use VS Code. I'm sure there's others, but this is just the default one that everyone knows, so we'll be showing it in here. So some things you want to do is we'll go back to the actual game. So I already have it open, but you want to go over to here and open up the advanced debugger. So left click that and you'll be presented with this menu. Now this has a bunch of different things in it. We'll mostly be using it for checking areas, positions, and possibly variables, but we're going to be using it for this quest data button right here. So when you left click on that, you get presented with this little pop-up here. And so we're going to be doing Ernest the chicken, and that is ID 32. So what you want to do is you want to take this ID 32 and you want to go back to your Script Factory UI, click on this right here, and you can't see it, but there's a little drop-down menu, and then you want to click Settings in the drop-down menu. Once you click Settings, you'll be presented with this. Let me pull it up my side. Okay. Since we're utilizing click to script, we want to take our number that correlates to the quest we're doing. So 32. So you want to click on this, click to script settings. So once you click on that, you get presented with this menu here, and our config value for Ernest the chicken is 32. So we're going to put 32 in here. So now that we have our 32 in here, which is our config value for Ernest the chicken, we'll click save. One thing I would do before you start scripting and going crazy is I would look up the quest. I know what you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, this was just blank a couple minutes ago. I have a template that I use that includes some positions, areas, timers, other variables. That's just how I like to write my scripts, so they're pretty uniform in some aspects. So you could just imagine this as being blank. This is not a core part of the script at all. So just forget about this. So for the sake of this script, since we're not at Veronica and we have to get to Veronica, I would write an area if you don't have one already. Variables, area, create area around my player, and then just, name it whatever you want, call it whatever you want. In this case, we already have an area, and we'll say if area contains my player, Lumbridge top bank, which is just what it sounds like, just this area here. And then I have to grab another area, and we're going to grab that when we get to Veronica. One thing we're also going to do is we're going to grab the config value, which we set up earlier. If you remember, we put in 32. I believe it was 32. Whatever the config value is, we put that in for click to script. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the top here, click to script, and then just do anything. The config value is 0, which it is because we haven't started the quest yet. Usually it's 0 if you haven't started the quest. And it'll progress, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes, I think sometimes it progresses differently, like larger jumps. But anyway, 32 is 0 if my area contains the Lumbridge top bank, and we're just getting rid of this junk because this is just checks and methods from the click to script. Then walk to, I'm going to call it Veronica, and I'm going to call the position Veronica. Since we're just starting the script writing process, we haven't actually created the area position yet. So we got to go do that now. All right, so we're at Veronica now. we have to do a couple things retroactively for this first method we were going to make. So we have to create an area where we are, create a new area around my player. This will be used in the next checking part. Not this one, but her name is Veronica. Create a new area around my player, Veronica. You can name her whatever you want, but I like to keep things organized. Veronica. Radius starts at your player, so 0 is actually just under your player. 1 would be here. 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So I just like to just eyeball it a little bit, see where she walks around, just so I know that she's in the area. Just of a 5 is okay. So right now the area should be like something like that, and we could actually. That's the Veronica area. We also want to. I don't want to see that the whole time because it's annoying. We also want to create a position, or walk to position. Position, create new position, current position, Veronica. Now, why are we doing this? We're doing this because at the start, we're not at Veronica. So we want to say if we're just starting the quest, which is 32 equals 0, the quest is 32 and the config value is 0, which means we haven't started it yet. We're not at Veronica, we're at the bank. Our area does not contain Veronica. And adjust the method number. Walk to position Veronica. Exact position. Ignored checks because there's not really much in between us where we'd have to check for anything anyway. Break on death. The reason why we're doing a walk to position is because, and maybe they changed this, but my understanding of web walking is it'll try to pick a position in the area. So if you put walk to position, or excuse me, if you put walk to area, and it decides to walk on this fence, it's not going to be able to walk on the fence, of course, because there's something there. And I think that might bug it out a little bit and create issues. So my workaround is just walk to position, exact position, because then you know exactly where you're walking. And again, maybe they fix that, I don't know, but we're just going to write it like that. So walk to position, Veronica. And now since we still haven't started it yet, we'll pull the 32 equals 0 again. In this case, now we are in Veronica's position. Area contains Veronica. If my player is not in dialogue, and we're adding that because once we talk to her, we don't want to talk to her again and again and again. We only want to talk to her at the start when we have to start the quest and at the end. And also when we're not in dialogue, of course. So if we're not in dialogue, talk to Veronica, interact with NPC. You can do area filter. What this does is it will only filter NPCs named Veronica within this area. Now that's not really going to matter too much because there's only one Veronica, so you're not going to have to worry about interacting with other Veronicas, but that's just something to keep in mind if there's multiple Veronicas. Interact with NPC, interact with Veronica, talk to, make sure you spell it correctly because there's a dash and a lowercase t. Talk to Veronica. So what that's going to do is it's going to talk to Veronica. It does what it sounds like. So at this point, I would also turn on click to script because it's going to start recording the chat options you use. And so I just walk through it. Just walk through it normally. It's not a race. One thing I would do though is when I've written scripts in the past and you have this yes here, yes being you're starting the quest, if you have it, how can I say this? It doesn't always work if you stack them. So in this case, we're interacting with Veronica. Interacting with Veronica. If we're in dialogue, if pending option, complete option, yes. Now, the way we did this with click to script, I think it should automatically click to continue dialogue, but just in case it doesn't, what you could do is if in dialogue, click to continue. So what we have here is we just walked to Veronica, we interacted with her for the first time, and we're starting the quest. That's what we wrote so far. At this point, we started the quest, and we'll go back to the quest. Go back to the quest guide. Talk to Veronica. She wants you to find her fiance Ernest, who's gone to the manor. Enter the manor, climb up the stairs in the center room, then climb up the spiral stairs. So we're just finding the professor. So at this point, we have to create another walk too. And so we'll get his name, Professor Odenstein. Comment. Go to Professor Odenstein. Now, just like before, we want to grab the config value by doing just about anything. So chop down the tree. Obviously, you're not chopping down the tree, but now we just pulled the config value as 1. So if config value is 1, if area contains Veronica, so we're still at Veronica, and just like the one up here, if area does not contain, we're going to create an area around Dr. Odenstein and a position for Dr. Odenstein. Where we're going to say if my area does not contain Dr. Odenstein, walk to position Dr. Odenstein. So we found him. You don't have to be super fancy with the area unless you want to. Professor Odenstein, that's like maybe 6 by 6. Doesn't have to be fancy. But we're also creating another position, remember. So create new position, current position, Professor Odenstein. So just like before, if the config value is 1, which means we started, if area contains Veronica, if area does not contain my player, Professor Odenstein, then walk to position Professor Odenstein. Exact, ignore checks, break on death. So let's talk to Professor Odenstein. Now we should still be using 32.1 because we haven't talked to him yet, so nothing's changed. Let's see. Okay, so see, I didn't really grab any checks because It shouldn't, but now we have to go back and add the checks. So in this case, we didn't talk to the doctor yet, or the professor, so we have to talk to him. So just like this one, oops, not that one. Just like this one, if area contains Professor Odenstein. So you're just copying a lot of methods. There's not too much variance here. Just different positions, people, different positions, areas, people. If not in dialogue, interact with NPC. Oops. Let's get his name again so I don't misspell it. Professor Odenstein, name, talk to. Make sure you spell things right. Okay. Make sure you reorder things so they make sense. So at this point, we're talking to the doctor. Now this is a conversation methods we're completing to finish talking to him. So we're still on config value 1 because we're just talking to him. That's it. We haven't completed these yet. We're still in method 1 because we haven't completed these methods, or we haven't completed the dialogue down here yet. So this is still 1. If in dialogue, so we're just copying things again. If in dialogue, if pending option. So it should automatically just click through until it gets to this point. So at this point, we've finished talking to him. Oops. At this point, we finished talking to him and he wants the 3 objects: the pressure gauge, the rubber tube, and the oil can. I'm just going to follow the guide. The guide says get the pressure gauge first. To get the pressure gauge, we need fish food and poison. Fish food is blue box, found on 2nd floor, room. Poison is in green bottle. Use it on the fish food to get the poison fish food. Okay. Oh, wait a second. I got to get the config value. So we got to get the config value. I believe it should be 2. Yeah, okay, so it's 2. So I would say we're getting the poison fish food. If config value is 2, we're just deleting this stuff because it's not relevant. We're just trying to grab the config value. So if config value is 2, and now we want to go back and we need 2 things. We need the poison fish, we need the poison and the fish food. So we want to get the IDs. Now I'm not sure if the IDs are different because they're quest items. We could check. Fish food. I would imagine it's not different. So we went to the OSRS box and we grabbed the ID value for fish food, which is right here. So what we could say is, going back to this, we could say if config value 32 equals 2, which means we're at the point where we're starting to collect items. Not necessarily the fish food, but in this case, we're going to start with the fish food. We could say if inventory does not contain items 272, and make sure you change it to ID. And this means if inventory does not contain the fish food, then we could go get the fish food. I think they said it was here. And gotta get there. I think that ghost is gonna attack me. So I'm going to make a position here. Create position. If inventory does not contain 272, which is fish food, I'll also say if area contains, you don't necessarily need this, but I don't know. I like to get, he's gonna kill me. You don't necessarily need this, but I like to get in the habit of just putting, oh, it doesn't kill you. Okay. All right, well, we're just gonna continue the plan anyway. So what the plan is that if area contains Dr. Odenstein, if we don't have the fish food, then we're gonna walk to fish food position. Exact location, ignore checks, break on death. And that's just gonna walk here. And then we could create a little area around it. Well, you don't have to do this. Okay, we'll do if ground item, fish food, take. Okay, if ground item exists, ground item exists, make sure you drop down the config value. Ground item exists. Make sure I grab the ID again. If inventory does not contain items, fish food, interact with ground item. I think it's take, right? Take fish food. So this is not, there's no area check here. So basically all it's doing is if this exists, so like even if you can't see it, like right now you can't see it, as long as the fish food exists, it's going to grab it. And since it's already should be in the area, you don't have to create some fanciness. So it's going to grab the fish food. Let me save this. All right, so now it took it, and then theoretically it should respawn, and then it should not take it because you already have the. Okay, now we have the fish food, but we don't have the poison. They said the poison was where? Poison's near the kitchen. Okay, so we're gonna do a similar concept. I'm gonna double check my config value, but I don't think it changed. But we'll just double check to make sure it hasn't. Okay, so it hasn't changed. If my config value is 2, if inventory contains items 272, we gotta get the ID for the poison. So I think there's a couple different poisons in the game, so I just want to make sure I get the right one. So we're going to go see what it actually is first. I think it's over here. Nope, it's right here. All right, so just like we tested it before, I won't pick it up. I'll just so I know I got the right ID for it. Poison is a couple poisons: rat poison, anti-poison, super anti-poison. Obviously, you're not going to use super anti-poison, but I think it should be 273. I guess we're going to go 273. So if inventory contains 272, which is the fish food. If inventory does not contain items 273, which is the poison, make sure you fix your methods. We'll create a position again, current position, poison. So now we have the fish food, we don't have the poison. Technically, we should be upstairs right now. We're going to walk to position poison. Exact, ignore checks, break on death. Because we already walked down here, it won't do that, but we're going to write the method for picking it up, just like we did with the fish food. So poison take, poison take. Ground item exists. Poison. Inventory does not contain poison, and we're going to use the ID value, so it's 273. Oh damn, this guy's stealing all the poison. Inventory does not contain 273, then interact with ground item, poison, take. And so now it should take the poison. Okay, so it took the poison. So now what we got to do is we got to combine them into the poisoned fish food. So what I'm going to use for this is I'm going to stack methods. So poison fish food. Let's make sure we comment on this so it's poison. Get. All right. Mix poison and fish food. So I'm going to stack them together. So we're still on value 2, just double checking. If inventory contains items 272, 273. So that's if inventory contains the fish food and the poison. Interact with item 272, use. Interact with item 273, use. So what this should literally do is just click on the fish food and then click on the poison, and then you'll have your poison fish food. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. See what it did there? It grabbed the poison because it didn't have poison anymore. So what you want to do is something I didn't think about, which is you want to do the we want to grab the ID for the poison fish food, and we want to throw it back in here. So if inventory does not contain poisoned fish food, take the poison, and we'll copy that and put it up here. I will preface this and say that, like, if for whatever reason if for whatever reason you didn't grab or if for whatever reason you didn't grab the fish food, but you came down here for the poison, the bot would break. But in theory, you shouldn't have come down here without the fish food. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like this is very the path that you're completing this quest is very linear. So like if you decide to stop doing the quest in the middle of it, you would have to rewrite various methods to like pick up to where you stopped, if you know what I mean. So like if you stopped after you grabbed the fish food and you teleported to Varrock and you're like, hey, I want to keep going. Well, now you're going to have to create a method for figuring out, where you are in the quest and picking it up from there. So this is just going to be written in the sense that you're completing it in one run. You're not coming back in the middle of it. So we'll drop this poison because don't actually need it now. We have the poison fish food. So now we have to go use the poison fish food on the fountain. So this is another, well, let's see, hold on. I think it's to get the rubber tube. Oh, okay. So now this is going to be very similar to what we've been doing before. We're going to create a area and a position at the fountain. So a lot of these concepts, you're not really reinventing the wheel. You're just like changing up where the position is, where the area is, which NPC you're interacting with, which, you're not really reinventing the wheel. You're just changing IDs and the values. All right, so let's create an area around the fountain. It is called a fountain. Yes, area around my player fountain. Fountain doesn't have to be super large. Create a position that we're walking to. Fountain. 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 Position. Yes. So now we have to create a method for actually getting here, of course, because we didn't add that. So comment go to fountain. So I'm just going to double check that we're still on 2. We are, okay. So if config is 2, if inventory contains 274, make sure you put it to ID and fix the method numbers. If area does not contain my player fountain, because we're at the poison technically still, walk to position fountain. Exact location, ignore checks, break on death. Fix the methods again. Now we're going to get the gauge, or now we're going to get the gauge. Now we're going to get the gauge. So let me check something here. The way that we're going to do this is, I'm not sure if there's any dialogues after doing it, but what we're going to do is we're going to use the poison fish food on the fountain, and then you could put like a small delay in there of like half a second, whatever, but then search the fountain. And then if there's a dialogue we have to get through, it should be handled by this. If in dialogue, continue dialogue method, but we'll see. So if area contains my player fountain, if inventory, don't forget the config value. If inventory contains 274, I want to get the gauge ID though. Pressure gauge 271. If if inventory does not contain item 271, which is the pressure gauge, interact with inventory item 274, use, and we're going to stack them again, interact with RS2 object, fountain. There's no use option on the fountain, but I think I'll just click on it anyway. I should just left click on it. Sleep for half a second, and then interact with RS2 object. Search. So these are all stacked. So what this should do is it should interact with the poison fish food, put it on the fountain, wait half second, and grab the gauge. So let's see if it does that. See, it was too fast. It's too fast. So what I would do, I'm just going to manually, oh, seems to be pressure gauge in here. So it should click to continue. Let's double check. Yeah, it does. Okay. So that's too fast. You have to include or increase the sleep by like, I don't know. I'd probably just do like a minute and a half. I didn't realize the animation would be so long for that. Okay, so what we did was everything is okay that we just did, except we swapped the sleep from half a second to a second and a half to accommodate for the animation of poisoning the fish. I haven't tested it, but theoretically it should work. Let's check our config value. Still on 2. So it might just be 2 until we turn in the quest. And then it ends up as 3, I'm not sure. But just for safety, I would just check. For whatever quest you're doing, I would just check just so you don't mess up. So if config value is 2, if area contains my player fountain, I will fix the method numbers after. If inventory does not contain, we got to get a spade. So one thing that would help is if you actually read the quest guide, unlike me. So you need a spade to search the mud pile to get the key. So before we go to the fountain, we have to get the spade. And so this is another copy paste change value kind of thing where we're going to walk to this position, grab the spade, and then be on our way. So make sure you read the quest guide first. I'm going to include this. I'm going to include this after I get the gauge because I think it'd be a little confusing to see all this. You'd be missing a section of the script if I edited it differently. So I'll explain what I'm doing. Basically, what we're going to do, we already have the gauge. We're going to get the spade after we mix the poison and before we go to the fountain. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to include the comment. So we, just like this, we're organizing things with a comment, get spade. We're going to right click on it. And I think actually right click on the one above it, sorry, because that does below it. Method shift down. So we're trying to create space here. I think we need 2. So we have to do that twice. All right, so what we have here is the method for getting the spade. So we're doing this a little out of order, but we'll tie it all in. If our config value is 32.2, which seems to be the entire quest, if inventory does not contain spade, which is 952. Inventory does not contain spade, but our inventory does contain 274, which is the poison, which we technically used already, but if we actually read the guide, we would not have used 274. Then walk to position spade. And we have to fix the method numbers, of course. They're all off. Now we're just copying things down again. Fix the method numbers so you don't get confused. If config is 32.2, if inventory does not contain spade, but we do have the poison, because you did read the guide, right? We all read the guides. Interact with ground item, spade take. I think we missed one thing. If ground item exists. You don't necessarily do this because you're only going to take it if it exists, but why not? If ground item exists, spade. All right, so this is what we injected into the script that we failed to include before because we did not read the quest guide. So at this point, we mixed the fish food with the poison to get the poison fish food. Now we are getting the spade. So if you can imagine, we're like right over here. We're walking all the way over here to get the spade, and then we're going to walk around to get the gauge. So we walk to the position to get the spade because we don't have it, but we do have the poison fish food. We're at the location for the spade. We pick up the spade, and now we have to also add inventory contains spade, and that was 952. So what we're doing now is now that we have the spade, we're checking for the poison fish food and the spade, and we're checking that we're not in the fountain area. So just read the quest guide. Don't be like me, read the quest guide, okay? Everything makes sense here now. Yes. Now we just teleported over here, of course. Now we just got the gauge because we were responsible people reading the quest guide. And we also have the spade because we read the quest guide, of course. And we need to get the key. So if, I don't know, like, it just says key, but I don't know the ID for this key because there's a lot of keys. So I'm just gonna see if it's named something special. Of course not, of course not. I'm gonna say it's 275. I'm gonna say it's 275 because a lot of these things, all these items are 270, blah blah blah, 272, 274. This key is 275 in the OSRS box. It's just a guess. We're gonna go with it. If area contains my player fountain, and we're gonna create an area and a position around here. Create new area around my player, compost heap. And it doesn't have to be too big. Position, because we're going to walk to the position, of course. Create new position, current position, compost heap. The heap does not have a capital H, so when you interact with it, don't put a capital H. If config value is that, if my player is in the fountain, if inventory contains 271. So if inventory contains the gauge, fix method numbers, walk to position, compost heap, exact, ignore, break on death. Now we also have to include the debug comment line so we know where we are. This just helps you debug things later if there's issues. Walk to this position. Now, I would say check your config value just to be sure, but it seems to stay 32.2 for now. So, yeah. All right, so I double checked. The config value remains 32.2. If area contains my player, compost heap. If inventory does not contain, we're going to go with 275. That's just a guess for the key ID. If inventory does not contain the ID for the key, if inventory does contain 952 for the speed, fix method numbers. You also could put if not animating in there because the digging animation might be kind of long. I didn't really pay attention when I did it, but that'll just prevent you from spam clicking on it. Interact with compost heap search. Interact with RS2 object. Now you could put an area filter if you want. Again, I think this is the only compost heap in the area, so you don't really have to, but that's just an option. Interact with compost heap search. All right, so we'll run it. We're going to drop this key just so we could check to see if the ID is actually correct. Oh no. What? Oh no. Oh no. All right, I forgot to add a check. Looking back at this, because all the config values stay the same for this quest, we have to add a check for the poison. So we're checking to see if we don't have the gauge. Because after we have the gauge, we don't need the poison anymore. And you can also add that for the spade. And you could add it for the fish food too, but it doesn't really, I don't think you really need it. I think we'll have to add more checks for that later. Usually the configs progressively increase, so that kind of is your ultimate check, but it's not really doing that for this. So we're going to all right, so we were right about the key ID because it just dug up the key and it's not digging again. So the key config value really is 275. Okay. Now that we have the key, we have to go get the rubber tube. All right, so I don't know this guy's max hit. To the comment, rubber tube, rubber tube, rubber tube, position, creating position, current position, rubber tube, outside door. I am going to check the config again. I don't think it changed. It did not change. Okay. So if config value is 2, and we're going to use this pressure gauge as like a pseudo config at this point because the config value is not changing. So we're going to say if my player is at the compost heap, if inventory contains item 275, walk to position, rubber tube outside door, ignore, break on death, super duper. So now we have to figure out how we want to do this. I would say, because we've been writing this script, our run energy is pretty high, but potentially it might not be high. So if you're really running through it, so what I would say is add like a run check for this, just so you don't get like too hit by the zombie if possible. So what I would say is, you don't even need a config check for this, but we'll add it anyway. I would say if my player position is rubber tube outside the door, and it's under game settings, if running is disabled, which means you probably ran out of energy, then turn it on. Game settings, enable running, and then now that it is on, I would say 32.2, this is our config value. If my player position is rubber tube outside door, if running is enabled, if run energy is, you don't need too much. I would say like greater than equal to 10. And this is going to be our run energy check to interact with the door. So if we have less than 10 run energy, which isn't too much to get from here to there, then you don't interact with the door. You just kind of like wait here until you get enough run energy. If inventory contains, this is the key. Inventory contains, you don't need it. Okay, interact with, now this door might have a different ID, so this door ID is 131. It's 11470. Looks like that's the only 131 door. I could be wrong, but all right, so we're gonna do two things. We're gonna add a check for not having the rubber tube in our inventory to prevent us from running like back and forth and doing some nonsense. So if inventory does not contain, and I already looked it up, this is the ID for the rubber tube is 276. If inventory does not contain 276, And then we're also going to preemptively, because we're going to test this, we're just going to like write the whole thing and test it just so we know it works. We're going to grab the position for this tile right within the door. So that's 31083367. We'll call it inside the rubber room 31083367 Z axis, or the Z position should be 0. I didn't check, but it should be. Double check after. 31083367. All right. The reason we want that position is because the way we're going to write this is once we have enough run energy to run in there. And I would also actually, I don't think you need this, but you could also add a health check if you want to. I don't think you're going to get attacked really by anything. I haven't, so I don't think you'll really get attacked by anything, but you could add a health check before you walk into the room if you want. But anyway, the idea is we're going to walk to this position right here that we're at now. We're going to make sure we have run energy turned on and enough run energy, which we indicated as 10. We're going to we're going to open the door, and it's going to put us right here at this tile. Once we're at this tile, we're going to pick up the rubber tube. Once we get the rubber tube, we're going to run out. That's the concept. And we already determined that the ID for this door is 131. And it should be just be open. Yeah. And if this doesn't work, I'll show you a different way to solve the problem. If my player position is equal to inside a rubber room, if config is that, which doesn't change, if inventory does not contain 276, which we already got as the rubber tube, if ground item exists, 270. What I will add though before I do this is I'm gonna copy this ground item exist, which is the rubber tube here. I'm gonna add that up 1 to this interact with door check. Reason being is like if someone else did this quest right when you're here and you just walked in there because you assumed the rubber tube was still there and the respawn time is like crazy high, you don't want to go in there until it's in there, right? So now it's just checking to make sure it's in there before you go in there. That's the idea. So make sure you add it before you interact with the door, and it doesn't necessarily have to be here for this interacting with the ground item, but we'll add it anyway. Interact with ground item 276. Pick up, I guess. Take. Interact with ground item. What do we say? 276. ID take. So this point, config value 32.2. If we have the rubber tube, if we have the gauge, then we will go to this position outside the door, only because we don't have the oil can position set up. Of course, once we get to that point, we will swap it out, but this is just for the testing. So walk to position, rubber tube outside door, exact position, ignore checks, break on death. So I tested it out. It had some problems with, and I'll show you pretty much what it did. It was trying to walk out like this, and I think it was trying to click on this door instead of this door when it was trying to walk out. Maybe the camera angle is kind of weird, and it just said you can't reach that door. And so, you know, there's a couple ways to fix this. I'll show you what I did. The way I'm going to handle this is it's going to interact with the rubber tube. It's going to sleep for half a second, although you could probably avoid that. and then it's just going to interact with this specific door again, and open it and walk out. From there, I just put this position, the poison position, just to test to see if it'll, do what I want it to do. Of course, we'll replace this with the oil can position once we get there. This is just for testing purposes. So what you could do if you didn't want to stack actions like this, you could do take, and then the next one could be like and you could create an area in here, like if area contains rubber tube area. If I have the rubber tube, and then I do, whatever, I walk out and I go to the oil can position. You could change the camera angle so maybe it'll hit this door better and not screw up and hit this door behind it. You could tweak around with it a little bit. I think this will work, and we'll test it here in a second. All right, so we see it worked. That's what it should have done. I think the problem where it wasn't working is because the method was a walk to position method, and maybe that was kind of messing around with the I don't know what it was messing around with, but it didn't like it. It kept trying to open this door instead of this door. So the only thing I changed from before was I added this sleep after interacting with it, and then interact with the door. Before it was walk to position after interacting with it, and didn't like that. So this just ensures that you're outside of this, I guess, wonky door, and it goes from there. All right, so we're going to create a position for the oil can room now. Create new position, current position. Oil can basement. And then what we'll do is we'll swap this poison position to the oil can one. So at this point, there's probably going to be a lot of jumping around and pausing in the edits because I got to figure out the puzzle. I mean, I can see the solution, but I got to figure out how I'm going to do it. I think it's just going to be a lot of, I'll just show you an example. I think it's just going to be a lot of walking to positions, interacting with RuneScape 2 objects. We're going to do this pretty similar to how the whole quest is written, in the sense that if you leave and you come back, you're going to have to create a method to pick up where you left off. So we're going to write this in the sense that you're going to run through this whole puzzle in one run. So let's see. Oil can puzzle. The first step is pull lever A and B down. Now let me check something here. Entity hover. Lever A is 146 up. So the entity ID did not change. What about the real ID? 11452 11451. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to use real IDs for this. Position. Lever A. And we'll go over to lever B. You could maybe keep track. What we might end up doing is keeping track of these with booleans. But we'll try writing it without booleans first, and if that doesn't really work, then we'll have to include booleans. Oil can puzzle. lever A. Lever A and B down. If my player position is oil can basement, and let me grab the ID for the oil can. Oil can. Because a lot of this is going to be like, I'm going to use real IDs, I think, and I'm going to use real IDs, I think, but then I'm also going to have to, the ultimate check is going to be, do I have the oil can in my inventory or not? And then based on that, and based on my current position, I go to the next position, the next one, et cetera, and you're just kind of progressing along the different positions until you could get to the oil can. And once you have the oil can, then you stop doing the puzzle. That's the ID. That's the idea. If inventory does not contain item, oil can, walk to position, lever A. You don't need break on death if you don't want to, because you're probably not going to die. Walk to position, lever A. We're going to try stacking things. We're going to throw like some micro sleeps in here because I'm not sure if there's going to be like if the animations are going to kill us. Oops, that's not right. If my player position, so what this is basically doing is it's walking from this ladder position here over to lever A, pulling the lever A down. Now, if my player position is lever A, I think we're gonna have to use real IDs for this though. 11451, that's up. Not contain this. If RS2 has real ID 11452, oops, wrong spot. Lever A, that's the name. Walk to position, lever B. Exact, ignore, break on death. 11453, 11454. If my player position equals B, if inventory does not contain the oil can, if has real ID on lever B 453. Actually, we should be... Actually, we'll be stacking things. What am I doing? Walk to position, sleep, interact with. Sleep. So we're just gonna stack things, and I hope this works. If it doesn't, we'll have to do a lot of real ID checks for everything. And we'll test this by doing if my player position equals lever B, if I don't have the can, if the real ID lever B 11454. So if that's the real ID, then it walks to position oil can basement. So the way this is going to work is we're going to start here. It's going to walk to lever A. It's going to pull down the lever, and if that lever is pulled down, it's going to walk here, pull this lever down, and then it's going to just continue on. But so I just want to see if this works. If this concept works, then we're just going to build the rest of it out like this. All right, let's test it. All right, so that worked. We're going to build the rest of it out like that. I think what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to increase the sleep a little bit longer after it pulls it, because the animation looked like it was kind of on the edge of, like, not working very well. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to build out the puzzle with this concept. So if you look at the guide, it gives you like a map. So you go to A, B, enter door 1, which is here. So you're just following this guide basically. So what we just did here, running from A to B to, to E, F, G, H, I, J, K, you just keep running through all these different things. I'm going to build that out, and if I run into any problems, I'll cut to that part and I'll show you what I did to fix it. All right, so we're back. As you can see, we added quite a bit since I left you, but the concept is the same. We, based on our position, we walk to our next target position. We interact with that lever, and then once the lever real ID changes, then we walk to the next position, interact with that lever, etc., etc. It just repeats over and over. I haven't tested the whole thing yet. I was just doing it manually, walking through, collecting positions and real IDs and whatnot. But we'll test it again, or not test it again. We'll test it for the first time. Just remember that you get the real ID by going to the settings menu here in OSBot, clicking entity hover, and then hovering over it, and then you'll see from the top 1, 2, 3 down the real ID, and that changes based on if it's up or down. So here we go. I think this is the spot. So it should have reset because I went into the oil can room, and I left it, so that should have reset the whole puzzle. In theory, this should work now. So it doesn't like the web walking for this. Um, so that would have been the easy way to do it. What I think I'm going to end up having to do is, I guess, putting positions here and basically on either side, so here and here. And then instead of having it walk to the lever position, it first walks in front of the door, interacts with the door, and then once it's on the other side, it continues on. So it's just a little bit of extra fluff to make it work. I guess it doesn't like web walking, so we'll do that and then we'll test it out. So let's talk about some of the things I changed. Obviously, I got to the oil can, as you could see. Some of the things I changed was walking to the oil can basement. I added the skeleton check here because um, one of the runs I did, the position was off first of all, which probably caused the issue. But because the issue was off, it ran to the start of the basement, which is by that ladder over there. And that's because, it met all these conditions. So the only way it should run to that position now is if the skeleton is nearby. So that was a small tweak. But what I had to do to make it work was very tedious. So typically with web walking, what it will do, it will solve all the, I wouldn't say all, but it'll solve most of the obstacles along the way. So for example, if this was a normal door and I was right here and I said walk to this position over there with web walking, typically it would solve this, quote unquote, solve this door and walk through it and then walk to this position. Now, it wasn't working that way when I originally wrote it. As you saw, it failed. And so what I had to do is it's very tedious. What I had to do is I had to create positions on either side of the door and then walk to this position, interact with the door, walk to, once it's on this position, then walk to the next position, if that makes sense. So in this case, it was walk from, I think it was lever B, walk from lever B to this door, or excuse me, walk from lever B to this position. Once I'm in this position, interact with the door. Once I'm in this position on the other side, walk to this position in front of the door, interact, etc. It's very tedious, and usually web walking, you don't have to do that, but I guess because this is a quest and maybe things are coded differently, I had to do it that way. What I also did was I broke it down into sections. So if you look at the guide, it will be like pull levers A and B. That's one section. The next section is walking to D from B. So I put a Boolean that once I interacted with lever B, I turned the Boolean on. I called it B to D. And then while the Boolean is on, it does the walking from B to D. And once it's at D, it turns off that Boolean. And then it'll turn on Boolean D to A. And then it'll walk from D to A, complete B. And then it'll turn the D to A off and then B to E on. and it'll just do that the whole way down. So I kind of broke it up into chunks like that. You'll see, I'll show you in the script itself. This is the first one. No, that's not the first one. The first one is this one. So B to D. So once it interacts with lever B, it turns B to D on. And then while B to D is on, while B to D is on, it will do these, the walking in front of the door, interacting with the door, etc., which is here. And then once it gets to the lever D, it will turn that off and turn this new Boolean on, which will handle the next walking phase. So it is kind of tedious. I hope that makes sense to you. Booleans are true and false, so so by me turning this Boolean to true, now I'm telling it I want this walking phase, which would normally be handled by web walking, to be true. I do the interaction with the lever. I turn the next walking phase on to true and the old one off, and I keep recycling that until I get to the oil can. So if I hope that makes sense. You're basically replacing web walking with these very tedious steps that you normally would never do. If you have any questions on that, let me know. But if you just pause it and see how I did it, you'll see that each one of these positions is right in front of the door, and after the door. So you see it's not updated. B, where's A? So right in front, after. Next one, 4A, 4B, right after, right in front. And then the way you would know which doors you're interacting with is they all have different IDs. That's 145, 140, 143, 140, kind of hard to see. Pretty hard to see. 138. Looks like 137, 141. So they all have different IDs for the doors. So when you interact with the door or interact with the RuneScape 2 object, make sure you put the specific door you're trying to interact with. So very tedious, very annoying, but it is solvable if web walking doesn't work. And it wasn't that much slower either. So we will go on to, I think we turned it in at this point. Let's check. Leave the basement, go to the top floor, turn it in, and that's it. So let's go turn in the quest and write that part. There's a mistake in this. It's supposed to be interact with ground item, oil can. Not RS2 on. So if your script is not working and you copied me exactly, it's supposed to be a ground object, not an RS2 object. And then I had to run back to here because we don't have, well, I did have the professor one position, but I just, yeah. So I just tried doing web walking from the basement to Dr. Odenstein and it didn't work. I guess it gets hung up on this lever part here. So you got to write a little method for this. Probably create a new position here. Position. Top. Call it top of basement. So going back up to it, actually, we're going back in a little reverse here. Rubber tubing to double check that actually. Okay, so what we did here is we added a check for the lever. So once we're at the top of the basement with the oil can, we interact with the lever, and then theoretically it should web walk. It should web walk up to the professor. Let me double check though that we're still on. Yeah, we're still in the same config value. Okay. All right, so we're at the professor right now. I restarted my OS bot just to see if web walking was kind of glitched and restarting it would help. Um, I think it might have been because when I restarted it, it wanted to run to the basement, and it only wanted to run to the basement because I didn't have a check, which I added right here, which is if inventory does not contain 277, which is the oil can. And then here, if inventory does not contain 277, I have to add that because otherwise it wants me to run to the fish food. So it seems like adding the oil can check to this and restarting OSBot and adding the oil can check to walking to the basement should be the fix. So right now it's doing nothing because it's waiting for a input, or not an input. Right now it's doing nothing because it's waiting for a valid method to run. And the valid method, the last one we'll have, will be talking to him and turning in the quest. So let's add that. All right, so as you can see, we finished the quest. The turn-in part wasn't too spectacular. It was just interacting with him. There was no special dialogues. It was just continue. What I'm going to do, though, is because there's no special dialogues, I'm just going to move this up to here. So I'm going to add a I think I dragged something back since, I guess. All right, double config, that's kind of weird. Anyway, I'm going to add a or here. I'm going to add this. And what that basically means is I just started the quest. It looks like the methods got shifted around there a bit. Not sure why. So anyway, the ending of the quest was interact with the professor, and there's no special interactions besides just continue dialogue. So I moved it up to here. So either at the start of the quest you interact with him, or if you have the oil can, which means you're at the end basically. So I'm gonna delete that from down here, and that just cleans it up. It's not like you can still put it at the bottom if you want, but you know, whatever. Just it's the same thing. The one thing we do have to do though is because I was running around manually grabbing, the positions and areas, the one thing that the script might not do is this part right here where it has to run to the basement. It might not interact with this bookcase properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this on an alternate account that hasn't run it, and I'm going to do like a trial run and see what happens. And if there's bugs, I'll fix it, and you know, hopefully there's no bugs, but we'll see what happens. I see. So I was just gonna pause it right here and just say something. This was down here for some reason. I guess it got dragged. So that was supposed to be up here. If you're not in the quest start area, then you're supposed to walk there. Got to pause it right here. I guess for some reason this did not get included in the one of the chat options. We got to add this. Complete. You could probably click to script this. So I'm just going to type it in. Select option. Change them back this instant. And if you stack it, I think it should just work. So I didn't interact with the fountain for some reason to get the gauge. I had to do that myself. Not sure what happened there, so I'm gonna try to write a little boolean for it, and maybe that will help it. We'll call it poison fountain 2. And once we walk to the fountain, we'll set it as true. And we'll delete the sleep because we're not going to use it. We'll shift this down so we can insert this. And we'll say if get boolean if poison fountain is true. I'll say if poison fountain is true, then interact. I think I still have to put a sleep on this though. Or if my player is not animating, maybe the animation is just longer than that. I think I had it like 1.5 seconds. Interact. I'll put the sleep back on as like 2 seconds. 2 seconds. Then we'll shift this down again. If inventory contains inventory contains the gauge. If fountain is true, set boolean as false. Now, this might be totally unnecessary if the sleep was just too short and it was okay before. In other words, the sleep before was like 1.5 seconds. If I bumped it up to like 2 seconds or 3 seconds, that might have been long enough. Maybe also add. Okay, so what this is going to do is when I walk to the fountain, it's going to set a Boolean for searching. Oh. Well, I would have called it searching the fountain. So I would have called the searching fountain instead of poisoning the fountain, but you kind of get the idea. So basically, once I walk to the fountain, it's going to turn a Boolean true. If that Boolean is true and I'm not animating, then it's going to interact with the fountain. And then if I have the item in my inventory, which is the gauge, it's going to set the Boolean to false. Now, all this might have been fixed if I just extended the sleep length. But it's kind of hard to tell because I don't think I could do that part again and not have to rerun a new account through it. It also deselects any items just in case that was the bug. I didn't really watch it, so maybe it was selected. Maybe it had something selected as it was trying to search and that broke it. The one thing I see coming up now is the rubber tube. I'm not sure if the web walking is going to actually work to get to the basement. I might have to do a method to walk in front of the bookcase and then interact with it and then continue on. So if that's the case, it shouldn't be difficult to fix, but that I didn't really test it, is what I'm trying to say. So that might be an issue. Yeah, see what's trying to do is it's technically walking to the basement, but it can't actually access the basement from here. See, the basement's over there. It can't actually access it from here. So I'm going to pause it, and then we got to add a little bit. So it doesn't like the web walking for this bookcase. So we're going to add a position here, bookcase. And that was 30. Walk to position bookcase. And we're just going to shift things down pretty much. If my player position is bookcase. And we're getting the config value, even though it doesn't change, and we're checking if we have the oil can, because once we walk through here, I don't want to walk back and forth once with the oil can. So if I have the bookcase, if I'm at the bookcase, interact, bookcase search, interact. I could probably add like, how long did I have it here? 7 seconds or so? not even. I don't know why this is here. I think we fixed this. So we could delete this. I'm going to interact with that and sleep for 7 seconds. And then we're also going to do sleep for 7 seconds for the bookcase. And we're going to stack these. So it's going to interact with it, it's going to sleep, and then it's going to walk from here to there pretty much. Save it. We got to add a position here, I guess. Or I'm going to do an area check here. I don't know what's up with this house. Like, it doesn't like web walking at all. Maybe it's an anti-bot feature. I'm not really sure. We're also going to change this to like 4 seconds because 7 seconds is pretty long. So what we're going to do is if area contains my player, bookcase to basement, and of course, if we don't have the oil can, then we're going to walk to the basement. Theoretically, it should work. Oh my gosh, it really doesn't like that at all, does it? Alright, it does not like web walking from here to the basement for some reason. So we're going to have to 133 climb down. All right, so we got to fix this web walking issue again. It doesn't like web walking, so we got to interact with the ladder instead of actually web walking. It's like an anti-web walk house. And I don't know what happened to this. Something messed up with the save, but we got to walk back to the professor now, and we'll turn it in. And of course, we missed the in dialogue for this, so it's going to spam interact with them. Of course, 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 of course. All right. We're going to run this through on another account and see if all the fixes we made actually, work. All right. This seems to work, but I got to add a dialogue check because I didn't think about that. Adjust that. But and now this isn't working either. What the heck? The problem is here. I guess I saved it with the methods off. All right. So besides the ending and those two issues, again, those two issues were saved incorrectly. So that was an easy fix, just shifting them. And the dialogue, where was it? I had to add a if not in dialogue check here. So just two small things, pretty easy to fix. Overall, the script works pretty well. Um, could it be faster? Yes. There's there's you could probably remove some of these sleeps down here. Like a lot of these have not here, like these sleeps from interacting with the levers. You could probably cut those down or remove them entirely. Um, what else? There's some other small tweaks you could probably make, but overall it works pretty well. Gets the quest done. I didn't realize there'd be so many issues with web walking during it. I thought it would I thought you could just use web walking normally here, but even after the restart, it didn't work very well. So maybe that's just a feature of the quest itself to help reduce botting. I'm not sure, but it was a little more tedious than I thought it would be because of that. But but overall, I'm pretty happy. If you have any questions, let me know. I could try to answer them. Um, I tried to explain things pretty well in the video, or pretty slowly anyway, so you could grasp the idea. But if you don't understand something, just let me know. I could answer the question for you. So I'll go down slowly through the entire script so you could see the whole thing, and you could pause it if you want at a certain point. Obviously, you can't see the positions and coordinates through this, but if you watch the video, you could get an idea of where they should be anyway. And where I put them doesn't have to be exactly where they have to be. You could adjust them a little bit. But if you followed along, you should be able to build your own, or at least learn how to build your own so you could use it for a different quest. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.